Welcome to the IDP Hunting Grounds. I'm your host, Steve Hungarter. My Twitter handle is IDP Hunters. I am a writer at the Fantasy Six Pack as well as IDP Plus. I'm also a host of a Spotify channel on Fantasy Six Pack, and I also run this YouTube channel, IDP Hunting Grounds. My guest tonight is Steve Scholz, also known as Big Steve, FF, over on Twitter. He's also a writer over at the IDP guys. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing good.
I'm learning a lot about you the more videos we do. We've done so many mocks, do so many stuff. I understand you're a Packers fan from Chicago.
Yeah. I'm. I don't know. I must have been dropped on my head as a baby.
You're an excellent fisherman. And here's something my audience at home probably doesn't know. Steve is a scout. He's a collegiate scout, actually. And you went down to the Senior Bowl. And I'm pretty sure that's a huge advantage over some of us guys that get a lot of our footage off of YouTube.
Yeah, it definitely helps seeing players in person. And, I mean, it's one thing to be able to try to spot them on game film. It's another thing to be in the stands and getting a chance to really watch these players work in live action. I mean, sometimes the game film just doesn't do them justice.
I imagine, and that's why kind of like PFF, because PFF is like true data. Like if you're in person, you'll see that quarterback throw a 40-yard pass, and then the receiver drops it. Well, no one records that, but PFF does. They could control the true stats, so it's kind of like through your optic lens, you get to see what these guys can actually do when their hands are in the dirt, huh?
Exactly, yeah, and you get a chance to kind of see their mannerisms, their compete level. We actually got to interview them for the media day portion of it. And you just get a feel for, some of the guys, their professionalism, their demeanor, how cerebral they are about their craft, and it just gives you a good insight into who they are as people and players.
I can't imagine. And then also, I'm kind of glad that you came on the show tonight, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to do like the deeper sleepers outside of, the casual drafts, because I know we've done so many of these. But in regards to the Senior Bowl and, in regards to scouting, what's your process? Like, what are you looking at when you're identifying certain positions?
Well, the first thing I'm doing when I'm watching the players, when I was at the Senior Bowl, I tried to just work on individual positions. So I would go and watch one position group and just kind of see who's standing out. I'm just watching it. I mean, it's football, right? You're seeing these defensive linemen line up and do one-on-ones and just seeing, okay, who stands out here. The same thing goes with like one-on-ones when you see cornerbacks matching up against receivers. Who's moving super fast, who's breaking up the ball. I mean, you get a chance to see these guys in person. A lot of times the cream rises to the top. The best players will show out, and you're going to see that. So I take notes on individual plays and things like that. Also, just kind of, anything I'm observing, but I just try to break it down, focus on one position group at a time. And a lot of the times there's so much going on that you have to take those notes. And then when you're, at the end of the day, you're looking through them, you're like, oh, wow, that happened. I didn't know it was that guy. Because I'll write down like the numbers and stuff. There's no way you can tell like which player it is. A lot of the times, just take the number, look, and you're like, wow, Michael Hall had a ton of plays, and it all adds up, but you're not noticing it in the moment.
So I have a notebook too, and I can't imagine what yours is. It's just like, it looks like Zodiac killer scribbles and stuff. But like, what would be a casual note that you would jot down on a guy? Looks good in shorts. Like, what would you write? Like, what would be a good scouting report for you?
So if I was talking about a linebacker, just looks comfortable dropping back, looks fluid. For a pass rusher, I would look at how they get off the line of scrimmage. Are they explosive? Are they a little bit? Their feet are in the sand a little bit. Are they a little bit slow? What's their leverage? Are they firing off and they're going to be lower to the ground, or they fire off the ball and they're a little high and they get a little lazy coming out of their stance. That's all stuff that I try to take notice of.
Yeah. And next year I'm hoping to do that as well. How many have you been doing that a while now? How long have you been doing the Senior Bowl thing?
So I followed the Senior Bowl like for years, but this was actually my first chance to go down to Mobile in person.
I'm going to pick your brain because I want to do it next year if I could. Now that I have a little more time, now that we're a little bit more in the fantasy community. My buddy over here at Six Pack, Mace Riney, he does it, but he does it. They do it off of drones and they kind of watch it from home. But I kind of want to get down there, smell the atmosphere, talk to the players, as you did. Do you have one last question for you, Innes? Do you have any interesting stories or maybe an anecdote or two when you were down there that you've seen?
So I was interviewing Sione Vaki.
I love that name.
Defensive back / running back / all-purpose player for Utah.
Uh-huh.
And I asked him, what was your favorite part about being in Mobile? From like the food and the culture. And he said they had some sort of like sweet bread. He was going to try to get the recipe. So, I mean, super cool dude. And I learned he was a big 49ers fan. Him, I think he's from California. But just getting a chance to kind of, back and forth with these prospects. I mean, they're there. They're trying to enjoy the experience.
You've heard me say his name before in a couple pods. I've been repeating him over and over. Actually, what I was going to show you on the screen, I was on a podcast and he was like my last pick. And I made the joke because, he has that dual eligibility as the running back safety. I made the joke on Aaron St. Dennis's podcast. I'm like, this dude's going to call me up. He's going to say, Steve, quit talking about me. But yeah, he's always been one of my deeper sleeper kind of punt guys because, he has such, short-term, didn't play very long. As the story went, he did his Mormon mission.
Yep.
So he kind of went back, and when he came back to school, they played him at running back. So here's the podcast I was talking about. And this is a good transition right here for it. So this is the one I did with Aaron Dennis on the Fantasy Football Universe. And he's always grinding these out. So if you're ever interested, audience at home, if you're interested, you want to see a mock draft and come on over to Fantasy Universe as well. So here's the one we did. And I always put Vaki at my end because I like that guy. Steve, on that note, we kind of already know these players. And for the audience at home that's looking for deep waiver picks or third-round picks, this is the episode for you. We already kind of know these players, and I kind of just put it on a screen. This is the kind of pecking order for the top 24. So on this episode, you guys aren't going to hear these names. We all know in some shape or fashion, Jared Verse is going off the board, Dallas Turner, Latu, Chop Robinson. At some point, the linebackers are going to go too. You got your Wilson, your Cooper, your Trotters. Then we got the DLs with Braswell. We got Trice. We got Fiske. And then, nose tackle Newton. Cooper DeJean and Tyler Nubin are usually the safeties that go. Most drafts, second round, you'll have Kitchen. I mean, we know all these. You're laughing because you already know. Nose tackle after Newton's usually Brian Murphy. We've done so many of these, right? And then let's do some more linebackers, Tommy Ecklenberg, Cedric Gray, Junior Colson. And then usually creative owners, when you're dealing with those 20 to 24 second end of your drafts, they usually do the Darius Robinson, the Hoopers, the Fords, or, Sweat as nose tackles. So those are the names we're not going to do. We're going to look outside of the second round for this episode. We're going to look third-round picks, or even deeper, or maybe even stuff off waivers that your friends aren't looking at. And we definitely want to get stuff that our Canadian friend Aaron St. Dennis may not be tracking as well. So this was his show. Me and you did a couple shows on IDP Plus. But yeah, I'd like to kind of use this time that we have together to kind of identify some sleepers, if you don't mind here. So I guess we can start in the defensive lineman. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, let's do it. So the first guy I'm going to talk about, he's actually been kind of quiet during this whole process because he's been recovering from a shoulder injury. Jonah Ellis from Utah. He had 12 sacks last season. A lot of them came in a two-game stretch, but a pass rusher that has really good length. He has long arms. He's a little bit light. He's not 250. He's not 260. He's a little bit lighter, but he's very explosive off the ball, and he's got good hands. So he's got a lot of the things that we like to see. I think he might be a little bit he might have grown already into his frame to, like, I don't know if he can really, get any like bigger, but the explosiveness and the technique and the hands are there. So this is a guy that I think will probably go in the third round or so. Mm-hmm. And he's not gonna, you're gonna have your big three of edge rushers plus, the tiers below that. This is a guy that you can probably get very late or even on waivers. And I think he's going to get a chance to join a pass rush rotation in the NFL and really, make a name for himself. So he's somebody I would take a flyer on.
I did earlier this offseason, I did an article over to Fantasy Six Pack, my top 10 defensive linemen, and I have him ranked as 10th. And to your point, yes, it is true. He had the 2-game stretch where a lot of that came from. But to be fair, let's give him a positive. He was generating, in that 2-game stretch, he was generating national attention. Like, I wasn't even really watching college ball at this point. I'm like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? So, yeah, for him to fall in the third round, that's a heck of a sleeper. You won't get that kind of value, I don't think, anywhere else. Probably in other drafts, you won't see edges drop like this. And I have an edge as well. This kid's out of Penn State, and you'll see a theme with Penn State players this year. Seems like they have all the potential in the world, and they don't produce as well. And I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Adisa, but it's Isaac. The name you want is Isaac. He's a DL/edge out of Penn State. He barely missed my top 12, okay? And he's usually on people's radars, but he didn't make that draft. I don't think he even went in the third round in the Fantasy Football Universe draft. He's often overlooked because he's in that next tier, that tier 3, but he's the second best edge rusher on that team behind Chop Robinson, right? But here's the stat I kind of want to sink my teeth into. He finished as a top 25 in creating pressures among outside defenders. When I'm looking at the edge players, I'm not necessarily, I am valuing stats, but I'm more so valuing pressure and metrics because if they can do it there, they can likely repeat it next level. It just, whatever reason with that Penn State team, it didn't pan out. But him and Chop Robinson both, they can generate. Some teams, some guys just don't go well together, but I'm sure if he lands somewhere, an Isaac, if he lands on somewhere, I don't know, Detroit, how about the 49ers, a team that can kind of use a transmission piece? I would consider Isaac there.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, the underlying metrics are more important. I mean, stats, that's something that, it's variable. But if his pass rush win rate's high and he generates a lot of pressure, he's doing the right things. Like the production will, come.
Yeah. So that's my DL. Do you have another DL there that you were looking at?
Yeah, I really like Javon Solomon out of Troy. So he led
nice.
the FBS last year in sacks. He had 16. He had 11 back in 2021. So it wasn't just like one big year. And just a player that's very good off the line of scrimmage, has good length. He's a little bit short. That's the knock on him. He's about 6 feet tall. But, I mean, the technique and the athleticism is there. So this is a player that has a proven track record. I mean, you can knock the fact that he's coming from the Sun Belt, but the Sun Belt's, had some pretty impressive wins over top programs. You just have to, ask Notre Dame.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, he's a player that has the production in college, and he's got the measurables to me. I just think because he's not 6'4", 5", he's not a bigger guy, like people are going to be out on him. They might, he's going to slide because of that, but somebody that I would keep an eye on.
I've heard you talk about Solomon on other shows, and I thought that was interesting. And I feel like I'm cheating here because I know this next player of mine is one of your guys. So I'm gonna kind of just put him out there and feel free to jump in. A player that a lot of people aren't key on, and I've been kind of jumping up in mid-third rounds. I've been kind of picking him up. It's Marshawn Kneeland. And you were one of the first people to know about this guy. That's why I feel like I'm cheating. But I want to throw this stat out here, okay? Mm-hmm. At the combine, to the untrained eye now, people are like, oh, he had an average combine. No, take the stats as they are. We don't care about, per se, a 40 time or this time or a jump ball. For defensive linemen, it's all about them shuttles and them three cones, right? So for Marshawn Kneeland, and I tweeted this not too long ago, he was faster in the shuttle than Trop Robinson by 0.07 seconds. And you know he blew it up, right? And he was faster on a three cone than Jared Verse by 0.29 seconds. So these times are on a course, but dude's going to go off. So let me just say that again. Marshawn Kneeland embodies a little bit faster shuttle than Chop Robinson by 0.07 and a heck of a lot faster than Jared Verse in the three cone by 0.29 seconds. What says you about Marshawn Kneeland?
This guy's an absolute giant. I got to meet at the Senior Bowl, and I'm about 6'4". This guy still towered over me. So think of like Hercules, but he moves really well, very fluid athlete. I mean, except some of the injuries he had, I mean, he would be even higher up on this list. So I'm with you. If you look at his shuttles and just kind of to give you an idea of what type of an athlete he is, this is somebody that I'm very high on. I think he's also somebody that could be kind of flexible in terms of like use. I mean, he can play outside edge, can probably move him inside, like on a 3 technique. That's going to be really appealing to NFL teams.
Heck yeah. I see that too. I see that coming as well with a Marshawn Kneeland type. He's going to get a role somewhere. And again, every name we mentioned, I don't see a problem with them being 3-down players either. Now, when we move on to linebacker, some of those names I kind of hold my breath because there's a lot of top guys. I'm like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that game is going to translate next level. I told you who my new number one is because I'm kind of a little bit afraid. I don't really know. I don't know how some of these games are going to translate. So do you have anybody else on the DLs that you're looking at?
Outside of, well, you have Branden Fiske in the top 24, right?
I put him in there because I know he's trending. I like him, but he may fall. So that's a good point.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's 24, and he's, outside being at Florida State, he was at Western Michigan. But this guy absolutely blew up the Senior Bowl. I mean, for being a defensive tackle, this guy was probably one of the most explosive players there. I mean, he was embarrassing some offensive linemen in the one-on-one drill. So, yeah, maybe he falls, but he's very impressive to me as a 3 technique.
Gotcha. I was going to say, as far as linebackers go, this isn't a superior draft class to me as far as linebackers go. I'm not really going too far. I had a name for you, which was Trevon Wallace, but I had to yank it. Real quick because he actually did what we thought he was going to do at the scouting combine. So I feel like I'm cheating the audience. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper. This name's probably going to be more of a 4th, 5th rounder, if anything at all. And the people that are going to draft him are going to be people like us that know the profile. I'm going to go back to Penn State, and I'm going to talk about Curtis Jacobs, okay? I had him as a top 10 before everything happened. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of college. So I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, Steve, why is he a top 10? Well, I'm going to tell you why he's a top 10. He didn't have the academic career like we thought. There were games he disappeared. There's a lot of people who are like, what the heck happened to this guy? And he really it's so weird, that Penn State team, because all these guys blew up at the combine. And I can't figure it out. I guess just sometimes teams don't want to play together. I mean, look at the Raiders the last decade, right? There's always been guys like that they just can't play together. They can't figure it out. But, when Jacobs went down to the combine, he showed up a little bit heavier in the belly. He was a little bit bigger. He was 241. That was bigger than we thought. Most of these linebackers down there, Steve, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they're all about 225, 235. We want shorter guys. So, when we seen 241, I was waiting to see the combine speed on him. He still ran a 4.5. He ran a 0.458. So you got a 5-star recruit, bigger guy. He can lay to wood, he can hit. He ran a 4.58. And just to make sure that I'm not smoking something over here, Jacobs actually had a 10.4-inch broad jump, which tied him for third amongst the linebackers. So, put it all together, Jacobs goes to the right place, right time. He can probably pop next level for us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm completely on board with that. He's somebody I would take a flyer on with a late pick or scoop him up out of the free agents. I mean, all of the makings of a good player are there, and that pedigree from being from linebacker U.
Yeah, right. But yeah, that's my guy on him. Do you got a linebacker that you're looking at?
I like Nathanial Watson from Mississippi State.
Nice.
So he's a solid tackler, decent athleticism. I think he ran like a 4.63. I mean, he's a solid athlete. Nothing amazing, but he was he led the FBS in pressures for linebackers. So that's something to look at. He actually has a pretty good skill set in terms of pass rush. And I mean, for somebody that's probably going to be taken later in the draft, is going to have to prove his worth on special teams. The fact that he does have a 3-down skill set, I mean, he might not be the greatest athlete or tackler, but he's got a different side to his game. I think that's going to be appealing for NFL teams. And it's like you said, this linebacker class, outside of like the top 3 or 4 guys.
Thank you.
It's really, we're all taking our shots here,
And it gets even grosser at safety, man. I'm probably looking at like the 2 guys I had at safety. Well, Cameron Kitchen, he didn't do himself any favors. So no. I'm kind of punting safety and linebacker, and I'm playing it safe. I'm staying what I know. It's a really good edge class. It's a really good corner class. And it's a quality, not great, but good defensive tackle class. So that's kind of my strategy this year, if I have to punt guys. So you won't see me in too many drafts this deep looking at linebackers, to be honest, So I got a name here. This will be my final name I'm going to talk about. A lot of my friends that know this guy, he's in there outside their top 15. You can get an Aaron Casey out of Indiana. You can get him fairly cheap. He's 6'1", 231. A lot of people don't know him. I know him because he's from Douglasville, Georgia. Okay. He ran a 4.7. That's the only thing that kind of bothers me here. He ran a 4.7. So he's a little bit slower than you're going to have on the field. So I don't know if he'll be a 3-down, but it'll be a 2-down. And here's where my thoughts are. He had 83 tackles, 22 assists, 83 solos, 22 assists, 53 stops. The guy's durable. He had 793 snaps. Now, I'm talking tackles, and I'm talking a bigger dude, right? But you know what else he can do? Pass rush. He tallied 20 total pressures, which out of them 20 pressures, context matters. Sure, you can run at the quarterback. Are you doing anything? 20 total pressures. Out of those 20, 12 ended up being QB hurries. 2 of them ended up being hits. 6 of them ended up being sacks. I'm probably not hyping this guy up enough. He's got a motor. He's got the instincts. He can tackle, sure-handed tackler. He's a straight-line speed pass rusher. He may get beat a little bit in coverage, but so what? Who doesn't, right? But, that's the only knock on him. But you're not going to have there's going to be drafts that we're in, and Aaron Casey's not going to be on anybody's draft board. I did a linebacker video a couple weeks ago, and AJ Veal was on. He does the Wounded Warrior. He used to be the Army sports writer for the Army branch. So it's like me and him kind of jam out, talking military and stuff. He had Aaron Casey. I was like, wow, really? You do? So usually most people I know, when you're getting outside the top 15 linebackers, Casey's name pops up. And a lot of people punted Jacobs. That's why I kind of brought Jacobs back on, because he's doing what he needs to do. Maybe they just need to get off Penn State in general, those guys,
Yeah. So I've got one more guy for you.
Okay.
So let's we did kind of touch on the safety class, and it's a bit of a crapshoot too. But I really like Cole Bishop. So another Ute. Played a lot in the box, and pretty good tackler, good downhill guy. He ran a 4.45, had a great combine. I mean, his relative athletic score was like a 9.82. So very athletic guy. Looked pretty good in coverage at the Senior Bowl. I think, my comp for him is kind of like Harrison Smith. That's who I see when I see him play. And this is somebody that probably is going to also be a third-round pick. So he's not like Newbin. He's not going to be like, a top IDP draft pick either. And just it depends on the spot, right? The situation that he goes to. But he has all of the ability to play strong or free safety to me.
Yeah. And you know what? This safety class is a lot of hit or miss for me. And this is a tough one to kind of lead the show on, because I was thinking about names I had. I had a guy like Tyler Owens out of Texas Tech. He's not a sleeper anymore. He blew the combine up, and plus he's the guy that was talking about he don't think planets are real. So everybody knows his damn name. The other sleeper I thought I had, he was top 5, he's creeping up, was Javon Bullard. He blew it up too, but those aren't sleepers anymore. So I really don't have anybody. So let me transition to cornerback, okay? And for the audience at home, I get it. Those on Spotify, I get it. You probably don't play in a lot of cornerback leagues, but let's say you do. Steve, you're in a 64-team league. I'm pretty sure you can use a cornerback, right?
Always.
So Cooper DeJean's getting all the credit. Kool-Aid Man's getting all the credit. Arnold's getting a lot of credit. Once you go outside of those 3, there are 8 cornerbacks I'm tracking. And just to save a little time for the audience, I'm going to give you some names. I'm going to give you those 8 names right now. And I guarantee in somebody's draft, 4 or 5 of them are going to fall out just by process elimination. So after that, Quinyon Mitchell, which is a popular name. After those top 4, Nate Wiggins out of Clemson, he's kind of popular, right? So after we get to those top 5, there's a couple names that you can kind of drop. A Miles Harden out of South Dakota had a great combine. Jaron Jones out of Florida State, he had some good stats. Cameron Hart out of Notre Dame. And finally, Max Melton, who's creating a lot of buzz right now on Twitter out of Rutgers. Those are my names for you guys. Arnold, Mitchell, Wiggins, Harden, Jones, Hart, Melton. Depending on what kind of drafts you're in, one of those guys is going to fall.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Wiggins. I really like him. I know he's a little bit – he's kind of a lighter dude. I think he's like 165, but he's so fast. I mean, if somebody threw him in like the slot or whatever, I mean, to me, slot equals opportunity, and I would jump on drafting them. I mean, some of these guys aren't going to be able to play outside at the next level just because they're not built to handle, receivers 6+ feet tall, but there's a spot for them in IDP, and just because they're not an outside corner doesn't mean they can't be productive.
I was just in a draft the other day, and he went off as a CB2 off the board. I'm like, you're crazy, but dealer's choice, to each his own. So like I said, that's kind of why I kind of put all those guys together, because by default, somebody's draft, they're going to fall, and who knows, with cornerbacks, or even worse than say, they're kind of dart throws to begin with. I'm hoping the audience takes these sleepers in, and I'm hoping that there are names in here outside of the top 24 that people can value and use. So, Steve, I thank you for coming on the show today. Can you do me a favor? Can you tell the audience at home where they can find you?
Yeah, hit me up on X or Twitter at BigSteveFF. Yeah, that's my main way to reach out to me.
He's usually on Twitter at night like myself. We're grinding. I'm looking for waivers during the season. Hit him up. Like I said, we only get better and grow by the audience and the network we create. If you like this podcast, feel free to subscribe. We have various guests. Steve, you're going to come back on, right? We're going to jam out and do this more often.
Yes, sir.
Love to have you on. Thanks for coming on. Take care, audience, and we'll see you next week.